today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Yesterday, on the undercard of Liam Beefy Smith's boxer debut, the co-main event to the main event, Natasha Jonas versus then unbeaten Patricia Bregult for both the WBO and WBC junior middleweight titles, the prediction stuck, and this fight really delivered because it actually was a fight.
Yeah.
Unlike what we saw, Big Frazier Clark and the man opposite the ring who so clearly didn't want to be there.
It's not Frazier Clark's fault in any way. It's the matchmaker's fault.
One or two mismatches on that card. What we saw in the Frazier Clark fight, the bizarre ending to the Liam Beefy Smith fight. But this fight actually was a fight. This fight between Patricia and Natasha, and it delivered. The prediction stuck. In my prediction video, I anticipated that Natasha would be the faster fighter and the better boxer overall, and I think that's what we saw in this thing. Bit of a rocky start for Natasha.
Rough at first, but she found her groove, and she got off several
Straight left hands in the first round. Patricia Berghult, she actually got off a pretty decent-looking left hook in the first.
Natasha looked strong and fast, and Berghult looked formidable, durable.
Durable in the first, good even exchanges in the second. Both girls spent a lot of time in the pocket, more than I thought they would.
Natasha got off a lot of body shots there.
And initially, I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting more of an in-and-out kind of performance from Natasha, whereas Natasha chose to dominate the pocket and get the better end of the exchanges there.
Lots of mid-range to inside action in the second and third rounds. We saw Patricia Bregult start to gas in the fourth as a result of those body shots,
which didn't seem to take too long to have an effect on the then reigning WBC champion.
By this time, it was established that Natasha Jonas was smothering Patricia Bregult and dominating the action in the pocket.
A clever strategy. Patricia Bregult actually generates decent power when she can get full extension on that arm, and it seemed to have been Natasha Jonas's intention to stop her from doing that, to not allow her to get that extension on that arm and crowd her mid-range to inside.
That's where she was getting off those hooks and those body shots.
And the wear of it all was noticeable in the fourth round. Natasha Jonas visibly hurt Patricia Bregult in that round, the fourth round. In the fifth round,
Patricia Bregult didn't want to spend any more time in the pocket with Natasha.
She attempted to maintain distance, attempted to box long range, moving lateral back to those ropes while Natasha closed in.
She didn't want to spend any more time in the pocket with Natasha, at least not in that round. She was trying to use those legs to get away, maintain distance.
Really didn't work, but she tried. She did manage to have a better sixth round than the fifth round was. Got off one or two eye-catching shots. Good effort in that round from the then reigning WBC champion. The sixth round was a decent round for Patricia Bregult, but the seventh round was a great round for Natasha Jonas, who got off several eye-catching and meaty shots, meaty punches.
Big right hooks.
Eye-catching shots that resulted in a rather punishing seventh round for the Swede.
And it was more of the same. In the eighth, Natasha Jonas was bossing it.
Story of the fight, really. Natasha Jonas was able to maintain control through the 9th and 10th rounds that resulted in a 9-1 to 8-2 kind of fight.
Natasha won wide on my card, though. That shouldn't give you the impression that she didn't have to work for the rounds she won. She had to work for every single one of those rounds,
which resulted in Natasha winning most of them. Her speed looked great, her power and punch selection, the right hook really was a money punch in this fight.
This was a career best performance from Natasha. I think it was.
Because she was in there with a naturally bigger woman who's 10 years younger, who just so happened to be an unbeaten fighter, an unbeaten champion.
The prediction stuck.
It's because of what I told you before. Natasha Jonas, being a naturally smaller fighter that moved up in weight through several weight classes, having campaigned as low as super featherweight, now campaigning at junior middleweight, she will have a speed advantage over most girls in today's junior middleweight division,
in tandem with her form, her amateur pedigree, and the skills that she picked up along the way.
In the amateur ranks and the pro ranks, coupled with Natasha Jonas being a southpaw, and we all know how tricky those southpaws can be. It's a lethal combination, to say the least, that in spite of Natasha Jonas being a naturally smaller fighter than most other junior middleweights, she can hang and she can bang. Natasha Jonas has always had noticeably...
She's always had very big quads, which make for a solid base.
As power is drawn from the ground up. That's perhaps how we can reconcile how Natasha Jonas, who used to campaign as a super featherweight, has carried this much power up to junior middleweight. That, coupled with a slight speed advantage that she has over most other junior middleweights, make her a sizable puncher in the junior middleweight division.
There's enough power and enough speed. Emphasis on speed. There's enough of that there that she can get the other girl's attention, even if the other girl is naturally bigger.
Think about it. Patricia Bregult was the naturally bigger fighter who's 10 years younger, naturally bigger than Natasha Jonas, but Tasha was able to hurt her several times throughout the course of this fight.
That's how you can reconcile that.
Congratulations to Natasha Jonas for living up to my expectations. The prediction stuck, and she proved to be too fast and too strong for Sweden's own Patricia Berghult. Now, Natasha is this division's unified WBO and WBC champion. In men's super middleweight news, a very vocal Benavidez Sr. says David is open to fighting Dimitri Bivol or Zurdo Ramirez at 175 pounds.
Empty promises.
These are great champions and good warriors, said Benavidez Sr. to Fight Hype, talking about the November 5th fight between Dimitri Bivol and Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez. It's going to be a good fight. Both of them have a lot of experience, but if we were to fight at 175, we'd fight anybody, Zurdo Ramirez or Bivol. That's a fight that people want to see. Why not? We're not like Canelo, running because of the nationality. We're fighters. We're here to show our best and here to show what we're made of, and we'll fight anybody.
That's rich coming from a couple of guys who have fought less somebodies than Canelo.
Though let's take the focus off of Canelo for a second, as there's enough of that to go around. You hear what Benavidez Sr. says. If they were to campaign at light heavyweight, they'd be open to fighting Dimitri, open to fighting Zurdo, two guys that fight off-platform. What are the chances that if David were to start campaigning as a light heavyweight, he'd fight a Golden Boy Promotions fighter? He'd fight a Matchroom fighter. What are the odds?
Oh, there's guys out there. They hate to hear about the politics and then wonder why certain fights don't happen.
Monotonous, I know, but it has everything to do with what fights you can expect and what fights you can't expect. And you can't expect David Benavidez to take on either Dimitri Bivol or Zurdo Ramirez, regardless of what happens between them in November, because David's not going to cross the street to fight either one of those fighters, regardless of which one emerges the victor.
And don't expect those fighters to cross the street in order to fight him, because he doesn't have anything they want anyway.
This entire situation would devolve into what we just saw between Jaime Munguia and Jermall Charlo. If by some chance the people at Showtime were to formulate an offer for the winner of Bivol versus Ramirez.
Oscar De La Hoya didn't want to send Jaime to Showtime. You think he's going to want to send Zurdo there if Zurdo emerges the victor in November?
No, of course not. And Jose Benavidez knows that. Something similar applies to Dimitri Bivol. Dimitri Bivol, who's in hot pursuit of more alphabet titles in his own weight class, in his own division where David Benavidez doesn't even campaign. So what the hell does David Benavidez have that Dimitri Bivol needs? If anything, David needs Dimitri.
Remember, we're talking about a world where Dimitri has already beaten Canelo Alvarez, and he will have potentially also beaten his countryman, Zurdo Ramirez.
We're talking about a situation where Dimitri actually ends up keeping the WBA title, and in a situation like that, what the hell does David have that Dimitri needs?
Nothing.
Nada. And don't misunderstand me. I'm not against David getting those opportunities. A shot at the winner of Ramirez versus Bivol. I'm not against that. I'm just saying that in order to get the shot in the first place, certain sacrifices, certain concessions might have to be made, and David won't make them.
No, it'll devolve into another my platform versus your platform situation.
Benavidez Sr. was quoted as saying both of them are very dangerous. It's going to be a good fight. We'll see the day of the fight. I don't know who I'm picking because we've sparred both of them and are great friends. If we're to fight them, we'd fight them. I think it's going to be a good fight. I don't know who is going to win because they've got different styles. Whoever shows up on the day of the fight is going to be victorious.
Did you catch that first sentence where Benavidez Sr. says that both of them are dangerous.
Both of them. Well, while Canelo Alvarez hasn't fought both of them, he has at least fought one. What dangerous opponents has David Benavidez fought to where he thinks he can chastise Canelo Alvarez for what his preferences are?
What dangerous opponents has David Benavidez fought at all?
While his father makes empty promises about potential fights that we all know aren't going to happen. Let me tell you a little something about David Benavidez. He first procured the WBC super middleweight title in 2017. David Benavidez is actually a part of the previous cycle of fighters and the previous cycle of champions. Champions like James DeGale, who held the IBF title, Zurdo-Ramirez, who held the WBO title,
George Groves, who held the WBA.
and if you want to say that at that time it was too soon for David to take on one of those fighters, take on one of those champions, or perhaps that politics might have gotten in the way, well then what the hell happened with the next cycle of fighters? The next cycle of champions?
Caleb Plant won the IBF title and he was right there on your side of the street. What the hell happened then?
So maybe politics got in the way of a WBO unification match with either Zurdo Ramirez or Billy Joe Saunders, who picked up the vacant WBO title after Zurdo moved up. And maybe you couldn't get George Groves in the ring because he was in the World Boxing Super Series.
Well, maybe you couldn't, but what about Callum Smith, who won the WBA from George Groves?
Oh, you couldn't get him in the ring either. Politics.
Because they weren't on your side of the street.
But Caleb Plant was, and your promoter, Samson Lukowicz, he didn't let that happen. He didn't make that fight when he should have, when he could have.
Remember what I told you. David Benavidez first became a champion in 2017.
He did lose the title due to testing positive for cocaine, but he ended up getting the title back, and when he did, by that time, Caleb Plant had already procured the IBF title, and the opportune time, the most opportune time, the most optimal time to do that fight was right then and there. But Samson Lukowicz wanted to wait. He wanted to build it, and as a result, he ended up shortchanging his own fighter. It wasn't about getting the most bang for your buck out of a Caleb Plant fight. It was about taking out the competition,
picking up as many alphabet titles as you can, so if somebody like Canelo comes to your weight class, they've got to come see you.
Your weight class, the super middleweight division where you've campaigned for the longest time. Do realize that before Canelo Alvarez even went on that undisputed run at super middleweight, David Benavidez was already there.
By all rights, you should have been a unified champion before he even got there.
You should have been, and now you're frustrated. You're frustrated that Canelo Alvarez doesn't seem to want to fight fighters of Mexican descent for whatever reason. Really doesn't matter. You're powerless in the situation. You're frustrated because you were supposed to be boxing your PBC stablemate David Morrell in the fall, and now that fight has fallen through. Looks like David is going to be taking care of his mandatory challenger, guy from Kazakhstan, and we'll talk about that fight in another video. But essentially, you're frustrated.
Pretending that you're going to fight the winner of Ramirez versus Bivol.
You're not going to fight either of them, and you don't fool me. You're not going to do what you need to do to get those guys in the ring. That's just the truth, and that's just reality. You're going to sit on your side of the fence, harping about Canelo.
But hey, Canelo actually already fought one of those guys. You're not going to fight either of them.
You're not, and everybody knows it.
You're just talking shit.
You're not going to do anything. You're going to cry and whine from your side of things about how nobody wants to fight you, and really, you're just not trying hard enough. You can't get Charlo in the ring? Change your decorum. Go somewhere else. See if you can't get some other fights. And why the hell are you still at super middleweight anyway?
As far as I'm concerned, he should have moved up a long time ago.
Still speculating about what might happen at light heavyweight. When it comes to actual light heavyweight news, Dimitri Bivol says, I want more belts. Ramirez is a big challenge and my only focus. Yes, maybe it's one of the toughest fights of my career. I'm thinking like that every time before my fights. I want to say thank you to Eddie and Matchroom and everyone in Abu Dhabi. Everyone who wanted to make this fight, Bivol said. I'm glad to defend my title in Abu Dhabi. I heard this is the first time that someone has defended a world title in Abu Dhabi. It's great to be the first. I hope it's not the last time in Abu Dhabi. Thank you to Ramirez for this fight. I know he wanted this fight for a long time. Me too. Now it will happen. He is a good fighter, and I like challenges. I like to fight against the guy who has won 44 fights and who is bigger than me and taller than me. This is a big challenge for me. I hope it will be a great fight on November 5th. I have to be focused only on this fight. Every time when I have a fight, I'm focused on that fight. Of course, I have great plans in my head. I want to be the best fighter in the world. I want to get more belts. But now I have a big fight against a good fighter. I try to be focused only on November 5th.
Do you remember when they used to criticize Eddie Hearn and the lack of promotion going into Bivol?
Do you remember that when they used to say that Eddie Hearn wasn't doing enough to promote this fighter? And now
Dmitry Bivol's coming off the biggest win of his career.
And how is it that all of that came into being? How is it that all of that happened? He was in the right place with the right promoter. That's how that happened.
Eddie got him the fight. It didn't happen by itself.
Didn't happen on its own. And the man standing in front of him, Zurdo-Ramirez, he is a fighter who was dissatisfied with his situation, and he decided to change his decorum. He ended up leaving Top Rank, ended up crossing over to Golden Boy Promotions and fights on the DAZN platform, and that's how this fight, more or less, came into being. These are two guys.
Two light heavyweights.
While David Benavidez Sr. speculates about what his son might do as a light heavyweight, these are two actual light heavyweights who are set to get it on.
While his own son's situation grows more and more frustrating. They can't get Jermall Charlo in the ring. David Morrell fell through.
Canelo Alvarez is busy.
I think about how many good fights have been announced for the fall.
I think about how Dmitry Bivol is coming off a career-best win over Canelo, and he's set to go right into yet another decent-sized fight with Zurdo-Ramirez, and I tell myself that I ain't got time for the woulda, coulda, shoulda from Team Benavidez. I just don't.
A content creator like myself that covers the sport might feel so inclined to give boxing a deeper look.
Closer one because I actually profiteer from it. But Joe Blow walking down the street.
Joe Blow ain't got time to mull over why it is that everybody but David is fighting in interesting fights.
Your average Joe Blow ain't got time to keep up with all of these stories and all of this news. What they're going to notice after a while is while everybody else is fighting in an interesting fight, David Benavidez is not. And after a while, it starts to look a certain way to where maybe you're not trying hard enough.
Maybe you're not. Zurdo went from Top Rank to Golden Boy.
Now he's about to fight in a big fight. Dmitry Bivol, he's coming off a career-best win over a big name, and now he's set to fight in yet another interesting fight. And all the while, what are you doing?
And what is your team doing for you? What's the benefit of you staying on that side of the street?
Something's got to change.